You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I know each and every show I thank all of you, and I can't thank you enough for all your support. Our listeners are growing each and every day organically, just because you're letting your friends and families know, sending maybe links to some of our podcasts. Many of you are listening to the podcasts you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Of course, we have our own app, Boomers Today, and you could download that for free on your Android phone or Apple phone. iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, all sorts of stations. And you could also go to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. And our listeners are growing because we have great guests. And today's not going to be any different. We have with us Jason Neufeld, who is the founding partner of Elder Needs Law, which focuses on a variety of Florida elder law matters, including estate planning, Medicaid planning, probate, and guardianship matters. Jason is consistently recognized as a top lawyer among his peers in Super Lawyers Magazine and Florida Trends Legal Elite. Jason is an author, and he'll tell you more about his books he wrote, and on the board of the Academy of Florida Elder Law Attorneys and co-chair of the Broward County Bar Association Elder Law Section. Jason, welcome to Boomers Today.
Thanks so much for having me, Frank. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. It's such an important subject matter we're going to be talking about. And so I guess I just want to start with some basics. Estate planning. I know it says you're an estate planning attorney, Medicaid planning. We'll get into the Medicaid in a second. But when someone says estate planning, what's the best way to explain exactly what that is?
Yeah, I think estate planning covers two primary areas. The first is who is going to help you make decisions when you are unable to make decisions for yourself, right? As we age and or someone has a stroke or some other event that causes them to go from being lucid and able to kind of govern their own lives to losing that capability, whether it's a natural progression or suddenly, it's important to have the right paperwork in place to make sure that you have someone you trust to help you make health decisions, financial decisions, dealing with the government, dealing with financial institutions, dealing with third parties like different facilities and hospitals and all that stuff that really just help you live your life. The second component to estate planning, broadly speaking, is who gets your stuff after you pass away and how can they get it with as little aggravation as possible and paying as little in taxes as possible. So usually that means trying to avoid probate if at all possible. If you're in a situation where you might have to pay state or federal estate taxes, then minimizing or eliminating those and those sorts of issues that go along with that. So I think that's as simple as I can make it. That's essentially what all of estate planning is.
So when somebody hears estate, my personal opinion, I think they should have come up with a different word, whoever came up with that word. But somebody says estate, they go, wow, I don't make that kind of money. I don't have an estate. I mean, so at what level do you say that someone would be categorized to consider doing an estate plan, even though that word seems to be a little misleading?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I have a video that I put out and an article that I've written that talks about how some estate planning can be done for absolutely free. And an estate, all an estate is yours when you have passed away. You only get an estate when you are dead, right?
Yeah,
your estate is the accumulation of all of your assets upon your passing. So if you just have a house and a bank account, or maybe you don't even have a house, maybe you rent and you just have a bank account. Well, now whatever's in that bank account when you pass, that is what's in your estate. So it's not necessarily the Lamborghinis and the mansions. Everyone will pass away with some kind of estate. So what is free estate planning? Well, if all you have is a bank account, you are able to go to that financial institution and say, I want to list a pay on death beneficiary or transfer on death beneficiary. Different banks use different terminology, but essentially that's you going in there and indicating with the institution itself who gets the contents of that bank account upon your passing. Boom, congratulations, you just did free estate planning. And now, what's the wrinkle with that? Why is that not always advisable? Well, if, I think everyone assumes that, well, first of all, it's better than nothing. Everyone assumes, I think, that parents are going to pass away before their children. But it doesn't always happen that way, right? People get hit by the proverbial bus. So if you go into the bank and you list a pay on death beneficiary, and that's your son or your daughter or all of your kids, whoever you want, and you pass away before them, then that works out fine. And you have essentially a complete estate plan if that's all you have. But what if one of your kids predeceases you? Well, now you're back into a situation where either you are giving all the totality of your assets to the remaining children. You may not want that because maybe you have grandchildren that you want to provide for. Or let's say you have one child and that person passes away before you. Well, now you're back into probate land. Now you're still going to court because now it's not clear who's supposed to get your stuff. And that's where a will and a trust comes in. So at the very least, a will is something that everyone's going to want to have, because if things don't go according to what we think is going to happen, you want to make sure that you have your wishes in writing somewhere other than on the bank's paperwork.
And part of that plan would include, possibly, the trust, the will, the power of attorney, which is so important. All of those things are incorporated in all of that, right?
Yeah, in my mind, the essential estate planning documents are a revocable trust to avoid probate, a last will and testament, which essentially catches assets that you don't put into the trust or somehow don't make it into the trust. That's like our little safety net. Then, of course, a durable power of attorney, a healthcare surrogate. In some states, they call it a healthcare proxy. And then we also have what's called a living will, which is like if you're at the end of your life, do you want to be on life support if there's no reasonable likelihood of you coming out of it with any quality of life and there's no judgment? Some people say, no, I want to go, just keep me out of pain and let me go when it's my time. And other people say, I want my 5 minutes. I don't care how painful it is, because maybe they run in with the cure with whatever's ailing me in minute 3, and that's okay too. So it's just honoring our clients' wishes without judgment and making sure we do what they want when they can't make their decisions, and that their stuff goes to where they want it to go after they're gone.
Great. Good explanation. Thank you for that. So what other areas? So estate plan is one, which is a biggie. What other types of things would someone need the services of someone like yourself, an elder law attorney?
Yeah. So I would say the other, kind of our primary practice area is what's referred to as Medicaid planning. That's typically, our clients are typically over the age of 65, but not always. They can either be disabled, legally disabled, or over the age of 65. And for those folks, we are able to legally and ethically protect their assets and income and get them qualified for Medicaid to help pay for care at home, in Florida, care in an assisted living facility, or care in a nursing home. And I want to make sure we're clear. I'm only licensed in Florida. So the principles that I discuss, there is some version of it in all the 50 states, but the rules differ. So it's always important that you speak to an attorney who is, familiar with your state's laws, because Medicaid is essentially a state and federal partnership. So there are similarities, but the states have wiggle room to operate within kind of the confines set by the federal government.
So before anybody kind of turns off this podcast, Jason will be able to help you find an elder law attorney in your area as well. So if you're not in Florida,
I'm very active with the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. I have developed wonderful relationships with colleagues who I trust. in nearly every state. And if I don't know the right person, I will, someone in my network will be able to help. So I'm happy to, I want to be of service. I want to help people. And if it's, if it's about referring you to someone who I know and trust, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up something I'm sure you get asked all the time. I certainly do. You were just talking about Medicaid.
Yep.
Somebody could respond and go, well, God, I'm 65. I'm on Medicaid, right? No, you're on Medicare, right? So explain kind of the key differeces between those two.
Yeah, that's a great point, because not only people will say I'm on Medicare, they'll go, not only am I on Medicare, but I have the best Medicare supplement known to man. I mean, I have the Cadillac of Medicare supplements, so I know that I'm covered. And I have to be the bearer of bad news when I say Medicare, interestingly, has a very limited long-term care benefit. They will pay for and this is nationwide. They will pay for the first 20 days of a skilled nursing facility, rehab, or nursing home in full. And then days 21 through 100, so the next 80 days, they will pay a portion of the bill, but you will have a daily copay. Now, your supplement might cover that copay. So some of them do, some of them don't cover it at all, some of them in full, some of them partially. But after 100 days, doesn't matter what supplement you have, Medicare is not covering anything in a skilled nursing facility. Medicare does not cover any portion of an assisted living facility bill. Medicare does not cover any portion of home health care, other than if you need, if you're prescribed physical therapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy and some counseling in the home, Medicare will cover some of that. But the bathing, the cooking, the cleaning, the transferring, the toileting, that stuff, Medicare does not cover. Interestingly, Medicaid, which you have to, there's strict financial criteria in order to qualify for Medicaid, has a very nice long-term care benefit that Medicare will just never cover.
The way, and you tell me if I've made the mistake for several years now in explaining this, I said, you probably were on some sort of group health insurance before you turned 65.
Yeah.
Whether it was through your employer or you got it yourself, that's your Medicare.
Sure.
That's your Medicare.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then Medicaid there's some, like you said, strict financial prerequisites, but that's your long-term care insurance.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, Medicare, very, very briefly, you have your Medicare Part A, which is hospitalizations and that limited rehab nursing home benefit. You have Part B, which is essentially doctor's bills and copays and your lab work. You have Part D, which is prescription coverage. And then you have Part C, or Medicare Advantage plan, which kind of like cobbles the other portions together. So it's just health insurance. It's very good health insurance, hopefully, but it's just health insurance. It's not long-term care insurance the way Medicaid is.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So we're going to get to a real important subject matter, and that's how people could have, in a sense, like you said, legally and ethically, have the government pay for some, if not all, of this long-term care benefit. It's a real important subject matter. I want to make sure we dedicate ourselves to the next part of our show. So we're going to take a real quick break here, Jason. And when I, just to recognize our sponsor, we're going to come back, and that's the subject matter we're going to talk about. Okay.
Sure.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
So do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authorities Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com, or you could call 877-907-8841, and you could connect with a senior care authority advisor in your area. So we're back with Jason Neufeld, who is a founding partner of Elder Needs Law. So Jason, a couple things. It's commercial time for you. So to tell us about, maybe the books you've written, how they can get it, and just any contact information you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, certainly. So first, our website is www.elderneedslaw.com, just the name of our firm, elderneedslaw.com. We put on there lots of videos, lots of articles. My goal is to educate. You will find my content is very little, there's very little commercials in them. It's not a sale. It is, I'm trying to provide useful information. And then of course there's my phone number and email and people want to get in touch with me, but otherwise I'm trying to answer people's questions. There's a lot of bad information, especially when it comes to Medicaid planning and estate planning. So I'm trying to, I call it spreading the gospel. So I wrote this book. It's available on Amazon.com. It's called How to Get Medicaid to Pay for Some or All of Your Long-Term Care Expenses without having to wait 5 years, without having to sell your home, and without having to go broke first. And people go, I know people like roll their eyes. They go, oh, here we go. There's Neufeld. He's just hawking his book. And I go, this is not a money-making venture. This book is like $14, I think. And if you have a Kindle, I think it's $9.99. This is not how I'm making money. I promise you, I'm just trying to get good information out there. But if you go to Amazon and you search Jason Neufeld and Medicaid planning, it'll pop right up, and a lot that's gotten a lot of good reviews. And finally, if you are in Florida, if you have a relative in Florida, or if you're looking to be connected with an elder law attorney anywhere in the country, I'm happy to help. You can give us a call on our central phone number. That's 305-614-7379. We have offices all over South Florida, but we help people statewide. And again, for your listeners who are not in Florida and don't have relatives in Florida, I'm happy to make myself available to get them to someone who I think will do a nice job for them and their family.
Great. Good. Wonderful. So let's talk about this Medicaid, which again is more the long-term care insurance in a sense, provided by the government, their version of it.
Yep.
So the perception out there is in order to get on Medicaid, you pretty much got to practically be broke and out of money.
Yep.
Right. So let's talk about someone who still has money.
Right.
Maybe they could even have a pretty large estate.
Yeah.
So how can they legally and ethically get the benefits of Medicaid?
Yeah. First, I think it's really important to point out the value of Medicaid planning. And I tell people this, I go, if you are ultra wealthy, you of course don't need to think about Medicaid. You can afford to privately pay for this stuff. If you are ultra poor or indigent, then you already naturally qualify, and you also now you have access to these services. It's everyone in the middle. Essentially what I'm doing is asset protection for the middle class, right? Folks who have worked their entire lives and they have some savings. Typically my clients may or may not own their home. And on top of that, they'll have between $50,000 and maybe $800,000 worth of assets that they would like to protect, because while that may sound like a lot of money, if you are in a nursing home that costs, in my area, the average cost of a nursing home is like $10,000 or $11,000 per month. So that goes real quickly. So that's what we're doing. The other thing I like to tell people is, I enjoy practicing law. I enjoy having my law license. I am not doing anything to jeopardize that, right? So everything is legal. Everything is ethical. I don't hide anything from the government. In fact, when I'm filing a Medicaid application on behalf of my clients, I tell them exactly where the money went and what we did with it, and why still under state and federal law, they have to give my clients access to these benefits. So that is what Medicaid planning is in a nutshell. So essentially, there are assets that are considered countable for Medicaid eligibility purposes, and then there are assets that are considered non-countable. or exempt from being counted as an asset. So essentially what we're doing is we are converting countable assets into non-countable assets in a way that does not trigger Medicaid's 5-year look back period. I think in California, it might be 3 years for you guys, but I'm not sure. But most of the country is that there's a 5-year look back period that essentially says, and that's a lot, that generates itself a lot of confusion. A lot of people know that 5 years is an important number, but they're not sure why. The misconception that I want to dispel is that you can't do Medicaid planning if you need it within 5 years. That is absolutely false. What you're not allowed to do is gift money away. So you can't say, for example, here I am sitting with $200,000 in the bank. Medicaid says I can only have $2,000 in the bank in order to qualify. So kids, I'm going to give you $198,000 and then go claim my Medicaid. Go try to apply. Well, if you do that within 5 years, you will be penalized and you will not get that benefit. That's the violation. Gifting assets away is in violation of the look back period. What we're doing, the strategies that we use, are designed to get assets out of your name in a way that does not violate that look back period, in a way that cannot be construed as a gift. So I know that's a mouthful, but that's essentially what we're doing.
Well, I've seen it happen before, with families that we've worked with who, before getting some advice, I go, well, I better start taking money out of mom's account and putting it into the kids' accounts. And they might have power of attorney to do it, but that doesn't mean, and then it ends up biting them,
Right. Not only that, but they'll get confused with the different government agencies, and they'll go, the IRS says I'm allowed to gift $15,000 every year without having to file a gift tax return. And I go, well, that's very nice, but the IRS is not Medicaid, and Medicaid does not allow you to do that. So even though the government agencies don't always interplay nicely with each other. So just because the IRS says it's okay doesn't mean that Medicaid says it's okay.
Right, exactly. So when we're talking about long-term care, okay, we're talking about home care, where a caregiver comes to take care of somebody. It may or may not be a nurse, it just might be somebody who's kind of taking care of someone's, like you mentioned earlier, kind of what we call the activities of daily living. Where we have assisted living, which is kind of like home care, but in a separate building, and you got caregivers there 24 hours a day, right? And then you have nursing, all right, which is more of a medical location. I know it varies on each state, and I know what you're going to be talking about is what it is in Florida, but there's going to be variables in each state. But that's what we're talking about. Medicaid, and it's called Medi-Cal in California. It's called something else in Arizona. Some states have different names.
Sure.
California, here we got to be different,
Right.
So kind of explain that. I mean, so would it always cover home care? Would it always cover assisted? Would it always cover nursing?
So the other thing I like to tell people is that Medicaid is not one program. Medicaid is an umbrella term for multiple different programs. So in Florida, and as is the case in most states, there are 3 different programs that are useful to my elderly or disabled clients. I want to start at the kind of the lowest level because I think it doesn't get enough attention. There is a program called QMB, which stands for Qualified Medicare Beneficiary. This is not for folks who need long-term care, but it is for folks who have very expensive prescriptions and expensive medical care. So for example, my diabetics, my cancer patients, the folks who are on, they're taking multiple prescriptions every day and their out-of-pocket costs are significant. QMB, if they qualify for that program, which we can get, similar to our other Medicaid programs, we get everyone qualified, anyone who wants to be qualified for it, we can get them qualified for it, will cover all of their copays. And interestingly, any doctor who takes Medicare is prohibited from charging a copay or deductible if their patient comes to them on the QMB program, meaning they don't have to be a Medicaid doctor. If QMB is QMB, if you have QMB, any doctor who accepts Medicare has to accept this QMB. Okay, so that's really interesting and really useful for a lot of people. So now the next tier up is what we typically call the Medicaid waiver program. That's for folks who would prefer, and most of my clients would prefer to stay at home or would like some help paying for an assisted living facility. So if they, the difference between this program and the other two is there's a wait list for this program in Florida. It's based on when funding is available, and it's based on my client's need compared to sort of everyone else's in the community. Meaning it's not take a number at the deli and wait your turn. It's, you know, we kind of have to fight and advocate for our clients to kind of get as high up on that list as possible. So after you're done with the wait list, then if you're at home in Florida, Medicaid will typically pay between 15 and 40 hours a week of home health care. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but that's kind of the typical range that we see. Now, other states, New York, I'm intimately familiar with because there's a lot of New York, Florida transplants. New York's home care benefit, I know, is better than Florida's. New York will pay for like 20 hours a day from what I hear. Florida is more like 20 to 40 hours a week. So there's a difference between the states. In an assisted living facility, and I know that Medicaid doesn't pay for ALF care in all 50 states, but in Florida, they will put typically between $1,300 to $1,500 toward an ALF bill if the ALF participates on the Medicaid program. They have the option. Not every assisted living facility will accept Medicaid, but a lot of fine facilities do because, you know, the government pays on time. It's just money. It's just another source of money. So there are certainly plenty of facilities that only want people who are privately paying, but there are plenty of fine facilities in Florida that will accept the Medicaid as well. But because it's only $1,500-ish toward the bill, Medicaid doesn't cover everything. So sometimes, you know, people are putting their own income towards it. Sometimes family has to contribute depending on what type of ALF care they need. So, okay, so that's waiver. ALF care and home care is the Medicaid waiver program. QMB is the kind of I call it like the best like kind of Medicare supplement program. And then the highest level of care is for folks who need to be in a nursing home, long-term rehab facility, skilled nursing facility. Those are more hospital-like settings. Those are for people who need 24/7 care. You know, when you're, you know, in an ALF, you feel like you're in a condo, or you may even be there are even single-family homes that have been converted to ALFs. So it's a very homey-like feel. Nursing homes are not like that. Nursing homes feel like you're in a hospital, and you don't lock the door, and the doctor's got to be able to get in at a moment's notice. But unlike the waiver program, there is no wait list for the nursing home program. In Florida, we call it the Institutional Care Program, or ICP. And once you're in that program,
that's another name that should change, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Really, I know. I'm not making right. It's not the warm and fuzzies that you get
right.
these programs. But once you're in that program, the deal with Medicaid is essentially all of your income goes to the facility. So whatever your income is, you're kind of there's some exceptions to that. If you have a spouse who's living at home, we can divert some income to them. But if you're a single individual, all of your income goes to the facility. They let you keep a very minimal amount. In Florida, it's $130 per month. Other states, it varies. But then Medicaid pays the difference. And these facilities are $9,000, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 per month. So this is a significant benefit where Medicaid is covering nearly the entirety of skilled nursing facility care. So those are the three programs that we are, for the most part, we're helping our clients.
One thing I could tell you based on what Jason just explained, don't try doing this yourself.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just don't try doing this yourself. So, you know, we call it, and you refer to it also as Medicaid planning.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Don't wait. I think you would agree with me, Jason.
Yeah.
Don't wait till your loved one is going to need this care. He's maybe, that person, whether it's a parent or a spouse or another other loved one, and they've been needing care, and you just kind of been maybe paying for it, or family's been helping. And then when it got real serious, that's when you're trying to put this whole thing together. And it could be done, I'm sure, but that's not as easy. So
and here's the intersection between estate planning and Medicaid planning. And this is, I think, particularly useful for your audience, the baby boomers. If it's been 5 years, 10 years since you've done your estate plan, you're going to want to go see an elder law attorney. And I'll tell you why. I tell people this all the time. Of all the fancy planning that I do, the different trusts and special needs trusts and all this kind of neat stuff, there's no more useful document that I can provide for my client than a well-drafted, durable power of attorney. And in fact, I call mine an enhanced durable power of attorney. And I call it that because what most estate planning attorneys put together, or especially, God forbid, the stuff that you download for free off the internet, these are not one-size-fits-all forms where you can just say, in Florida, I can only speak for Florida. In Florida, you cannot say, I give my son the ability to do everything for me as if he were me, so help me God, and that's the end of it. You have to be very, very specific. And if what you need to do is not specifically provided for in your current power of attorney, then if you lose capacity, even though you think to yourself, I have this great power of attorney, you go to an elder law attorney and you go, I can't work with this because it doesn't have the provisions that I need to do the type of planning that we need to do. And that's not necessarily because your attorney was a bad attorney. They're just not thinking about the same stuff that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about things that are very tailored, very specifically for Medicaid planning provision that are just not found in generic form. So I like people. I
can't help bringing up when sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure we get this in with the time we have, because I've seen this happen before where you have, let's just say it's a parent. All right. Parent has been diagnosed with some form of dementia, like Alzheimer's, and they never did a power of attorney. The parent never did a power of attorney. And it's kind of a subject where the parent says, hey, I'm going to be fine. I can make my own decisions, all that. And the adult child doesn't push it. And then it gets to a point where it could be too late, right?
Well, so what happens is if you don't have the right documentation beforehand, your last resort is a very expensive and time-consuming guardianship or conservatorship. Or you go to the judge going, listen, I don't have any power of attorney, or my power of attorney is just not good enough. So please, judge, give me the ability to make these decisions for mom and dad. And now you're paying a ton of money for that.
And the spouse, by the way, is not your power of attorney unless you write it up, right? You don't, the spouse does, because a lot of families think, well, my wife's got to be my power of attorney. Well, not if it's not written up properly. Right?
Or on my will, my wife is my executor or personal representative. Well, that's nice for your will. The will only comes into play after you've passed away. Yeah, the power of attorney is not impacted by that. You're 100% correct.
So what do you, again, we're kind of out of time, unfortunately. I could talk to you all day about this subject matter, but what would be your recommendation if somebody, I'm sure we have a lot of listeners out there who have a parent or other loved one that needs care. Some might be at an early stage of dementia. Yeah. They're kind of at that early stage. What would you recommend to them from a planning standpoint?
I'd say, first of all, if you don't need services now, but you know that you have a family history of dementia or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or something like that, so you see it coming down the pike, go see an elder law attorney, because there's interesting strategies that are not available for those who need the care now. The people who have the foresight to plan in advance, there's another suite of strategies that we can use. So plan in advance. But I would say 90% of my clients, they need the care now, or they need it in a year, or they need it in a couple months. So you go see your local elder law attorney. If you're in Florida, we're happy to help. If not, we'll get you someone who can't. My goal is to provide people with resources that for some reason are kept a secret. I don't know why that is, but I want to get them resources that they didn't know they had access to. That's essentially what elder law attorneys are doing.
Great. Jason Neufeld, check him out at www.elderneedslaw.com. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank everybody out there for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe. And we'll talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.